The stars burned bright in the void of space as Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. 12 massive screens showed the faces of alien leaders from across the galaxy. Their eyes watched her with cold judgment. But Sarah didn't know this would be humanity's last day in the Council. The meeting had started like any other. The Council discussed trade routes and mining rights. Then came the real issue, the shadow threat from deep space. Unknown ships had been attacking outer colonies. Entire worlds went silent overnight. "We need action," Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. "I propose we build a joint military force. Hit them hard and fast before they grow stronger." The Zentari leader, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, spoke first. "Humans always think of war. Violence is your first answer to everything." "Sometimes violence is the only answer," Sarah replied. "These shadow ships destroyed 3 colonies last week. Peaceful talks won't bring back the dead." Murmurs filled the hall. The alien faces showed disgust and fear. They looked at Sarah like she was a monster. The Vorthan representative, covered in golden scales, hissed softly. "This is exactly why we have doubts about humanity. You joined our council only 5 years ago. Already you want to start wars." "I want to end a war that's already started," Sarah shot back. "While we sit here talking, more colonies die." The Qatar delegate, a being made of living crystal, spoke in a musical tone. "Perhaps diplomacy could work. Have we tried talking to these shadow attackers?" Sarah stared at the crystal being in disbelief. "Talk to them? They don't respond to any signals. They just kill everything and disappear." "Violence breeds violence," said the ethereal council member, a floating mass of energy. "Humans proved this in their own history. Thousands of years of war on their home planet. And we learned from those mistakes," Sarah argued. "We united our world. We ended wars through strength and wisdom combined." But the council had already made up their minds. Sarah could see it in their faces. Fear, disgust. They saw humans as dangerous animals that needed to be caged. The head of the council, an ancient being called the Prime, raised his hand for silence. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "We have watched humanity for 5 years, the Prime said. "In that time, you have suggested military action for every problem. Trade disputes, send warships, pirate attacks, destroy their bases. Now this shadow threat, more violence." Sarah felt her heart sink. She knew what was coming. "The Council has voted," the Prime continued. 11 members agree. Only humanity stands alone. Voted on what? Sarah asked, though she feared the answer. "Your exile." The word hit like a physical blow. Sarah stepped back, shocked. Around the hall, the alien faces showed no emotion. They had decided humanity's fate in secret. "You cannot be serious," Sarah whispered. "We are completely serious," the Prime said. "Humanity is too dangerous to remain in civilized space. Your species thinks only of war and conquest. You are a threat to galactic peace." "We're trying to protect the galaxy," Sarah shouted. "Those shadow ships will come for all of us. Then we will handle them our way," the Zentari leader said coldly. "With wisdom, not weapons." Sarah looked around the hall one last time. These beings she had called allies now stared at her with cold eyes. 5 years of friendship meant nothing. Humanity had been judged and found guilty. "You have 72 hours, the Prime announced. "Remove all human presence from Council space. Your ships, your colonies, your people, gone. If any human vessel is found in our territory after that time, it will be destroyed." "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked. The Prime's ancient eyes glowed with power. "Then we will remove you by force. Do not test us, human." Sarah straightened her shoulders. She was a soldier. She would not beg these creatures for mercy. They would never give. "Fine," she said. "But remember this day. Remember that you threw away your strongest allies because you were afraid of what we might become." She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the council members whispered among themselves. They sounded relieved. As Sarah reached the door, she stopped and looked back one final time. "When those shadow ships come for your worlds," she said quietly, "don't expect us to save you." The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. In the hall, the council continued their meeting as if nothing had happened. They had removed the dangerous humans. Peace was restored. They had no idea they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. 72 hours later, the last human ship left council space. They headed toward the dark edge of the galaxy, where no civilized species dared to go. The Council forgot about humanity within a year. They had bigger problems to worry about. The shadow attacks were getting worse, but in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something was growing. The humans had found new friends, and they were all very angry about being abandoned. 50 years passed. The Council fought the Shadow War alone and slowly lost ground. Colonies fell. Trade routes closed. Fear spread across civilized space. Then one day, sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from the void. Ships, thousands of them, and they all flew under Earth's flag. The Council's greatest mistake was about to come home. 5 years had passed since the exile. The human fleet drifted at the edge of known space, running low on supplies and hope. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring into the endless void ahead. "Admiral!" her science officer called out. "We're picking up strange readings from that dark nebula." Sarah turned toward the massive cloud of gas and dust that blocked their path. No Council ship had ever gone beyond it. The map simply said unknown territory, a void. "What kind of readings?" Sarah asked. "Energy signatures. They look artificial, like cities or space stations." Sarah felt her heart race. After 5 years of empty space, they had finally found something. "Take us in, but stay alert. We don't know what's waiting for us." The human fleet moved slowly into the nebula. Strange lights flickered in the darkness. Then through the cosmic dust, shapes began to appear. Ships, hundreds of them. But these weren't Council vessels. They were old, battle-scarred, and built with technology Sarah had never seen before. As the human fleet approached, the alien ships surrounded them. "Admiral," the communications officer said with excitement, "we're getting a signal. They're speaking in Old Galactic Standard, very old." A voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in broken but understandable words. "Human ships, you are far from home. Why do you come to the Forgotten Lands?" Sarah stepped forward. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Fleet. We were exiled from Council space. We seek a new home." There was a long pause. Then laughter filled the bridge. Not cruel laughter, but understanding laughter. "Exiled," the voice said. "Yes, we know this word well. Come, follow our ships. There are others like you here." The alien vessels led the human fleet deeper into the nebula. What Sarah saw next took her breath away. A massive space station floated in the cosmic dust, bigger than any structure she had ever seen. Around it, dozens of different ship designs moved in organized patterns. "Welcome to Haven Station," the voice said. "Home to all the races the Council threw away." On the station, Sarah met the leaders of the Forgotten Alliance. There was Captain Vex of the Karathi, a warrior race exiled for being too aggressive. Commander Zara of the Nexari, scientists kicked out for dangerous experiments. General Thok of the Brutari, soldiers banned for questioning Council orders. 20 different races, all exiled for the same reasons as humanity. "The Council calls us the Forgotten," Captain Vex explained, his scarred face serious. "They threw us into the dark and hoped we would die. Instead, we found each other." "How long have you been here?" Sarah asked. "Some of us for centuries," Commander Zara replied, her 4 eyes glowing with intelligence. "The Council has been throwing away useful species for a very long time." Over the following months, Sarah learned the truth about the galaxy. The Council didn't just fear violence or aggression. They feared anyone who might challenge their power, anyone who thought differently, anyone who refused to bow down completely. The humans brought something new to the Alliance: organization and strategy. Sarah's military experience helped unite the scattered refugee fleets into a proper fighting force. "You understand warfare better than any of us," General Thok admitted. "Your species fought each other for thousands of years. You learned lessons we never had to learn." Sarah began training programs, teaching human military tactics to alien soldiers. She showed them how to work together, how to plan complex operations, how to think like their enemies. The humans also brought technology. Earth scientists worked with Nexari researchers to improve ship designs. Human engineers helped Karathi warriors build better weapons. Brutari generals learned human strategy from Earth's greatest military minds. Within 10 years, Haven Station had grown into a massive shipyard. The Alliance fleet numbered in the thousands. But more importantly, they had become a real family. The Council sees differences as weaknesses. Sarah told a gathering of Alliance leaders. They exile anyone who doesn't fit their perfect vision. But we know the truth. Our differences make us stronger. 20 years passed. The Alliance grew to 50,000 ships and 100 space stations. They explored new worlds, built colonies, and created a society where every species was valued. The humans had become the natural leaders of this growing empire. Not through conquest, but through respect and shared purpose. Other races looked to humanity for guidance because humans understood both war and peace. Captain Vex, now an old friend, visited Sarah's quarters one evening. The scouts report that the Council is still fighting the Shadow War, he said. They're losing badly. Sarah nodded. I know. Our long-range sensors pick up the distress signals. Some of the younger officers want to help them, Vex continued. They say we should be the bigger species. Sarah looked out at the massive fleet training in the nebula beyond. Human-designed ships flown by alien crews. Alliance forces practicing coordinated attacks. An empire built on mutual respect and shared strength. No, she said quietly. They made their choice 50 years ago. They said we were too dangerous. They were afraid of what we might become. She turned to face her old friend, and Vex saw something cold and determined in her human eyes. Maybe it's time to show them they were right to be afraid. In the deep space beyond Haven Station, the largest military force in galactic history continued to grow. Soon, very soon, they would be ready to remind the Council what they had thrown away. The forgotten were about to become unforgettable. Part 3. The Shadow War begins. The Zentari mining colony of Kepler-7 was busy with morning shift changes when the attacks began. Workers moved between the massive excavation sites, loading precious metals onto transport ships. The colony's defense grid showed nothing unusual. Then the ships appeared. They came from nowhere. Black vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. No warning signals, no demands for surrender. They simply opened fire. Within minutes, the colony was gone. 3 million Zentari workers reduced to ash and memory. On the Council homeworld of Sanctum Prime, the emergency session was filled with panic. The holographic display showed the smoking remains of 12 colonies attacked in the past month. All different species, all destroyed the same way. The attacks follow no pattern, reported General Krex of the Vorten Defense Force. They hit mining worlds, research stations, even vacation planets. The attackers take nothing. They just kill everything and disappear. Prime Elder Zenth, leader of the Council, studied the tactical displays with growing fear. Do we know anything about these shadow ships? Very little, General Krex admitted. They use stealth technology we've never seen before. Their weapons cut through our shields like they don't exist. And their tactics? He paused, looking uncomfortable. What about their tactics? The Prime Elder demanded. They're too smart. They know exactly where our defense platforms are located. They avoid our patrol routes perfectly. It's like they've studied our military for decades. In the Observer section, Ambassador Trill of the Peaceful Ethereal race spoke up. Perhaps we should try communication. These attackers might have reasonable demands. General Krex shook his head. We've tried every communication method we know. They don't respond to any signals. They just attack and vanish. The Council chamber filled with worried whispers. For 60 years they had enjoyed peace. Their military forces were designed for show, not real warfare. Now they faced an enemy that seemed to know all their weaknesses. Double all patrols, the Prime Elder ordered. Triple the defense grids around major worlds, and send investigation fleets to the attack sites. We need to find these shadow attackers. 3 investigation fleets launched within days. The first headed to the destroyed Zentari colony. The second went to investigate a ruined research station. The third searched for clues in the asteroid field where a trading post once operated. None of the fleets ever returned. The disappearances sent shockwaves through Council space. These weren't just random attacks anymore. The enemy was hunting Council forces actively and successfully. On Sanctum Prime, the emergency sessions became daily events. Fear replaced confidence in the Council chambers. We're fighting ghosts, General Krex reported to the latest emergency meeting. Our long-range sensors pick up energy signatures, but by the time our ships arrive, there's nothing there. What about the survivors? Asked Elder Voss of the Qatar Collective. Surely someone escaped these attacks. General Krex's expression grew darker. That's the strange part. There are no survivors. Every attack is perfectly planned to eliminate all witnesses. The attacks continued for months. Supply convoys vanished between star systems. Mining operations went silent overnight. Even heavily defended military outposts disappeared without sending distress signals. The Council's member species began to panic. Trade routes closed as merchants refused to travel. Colonies requested evacuation. The economy started collapsing under the weight of fear. "We need help," Elder Voss suggested during one particularly desperate meeting. "Perhaps we should contact other galactic powers, the Outer Rim Confederacy or the Independent Systems Alliance." Prime Elder Zenth shook his head. "We are the Galactic Council. We don't beg for help from lesser civilizations." But privately he was terrified. In 6 months, the Shadow attackers had destroyed 43 Council installations and killed over 50 million people. The Council's mighty military seemed powerless to stop them. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A damaged probe drifted into Council space, its databanks partially intact. Technical analysis revealed it had recorded one of the Shadow attacks. The recording showed Council ships being destroyed by weapons that looked familiar. The attack patterns were similar to tactics the Council had seen before. But where? General Krex studied the data for weeks before the terrible truth became clear. "These tactics," he told the emergency session. "I've seen them in our military archives." "What do you mean?" the Prime Elder asked. 60 years ago, when we were debating exile for certain species, we studied their military capabilities. The human Admiral Sarah Chen presented battle plans very similar to these attacks. The Council chamber fell silent. Every member remembered the day they voted to exile humanity. They had called humans too violent, too dangerous for civilized space. "You're suggesting the humans are behind these attacks?" Elder Voss asked quietly. "I'm suggesting someone learned from human military thinking," General Krex replied carefully. "These aren't random raids. They're part of a coordinated campaign designed to destroy our military capability while avoiding direct confrontation." The implications hit like a physical blow. If humans were involved, that meant their exile had failed. Humanity had survived in the dark void beyond Council space. And now they were back for revenge. 3 days later, the Council received a transmission on an old emergency frequency. The signal came from deep space, beyond the edge of known territory. The main screen in the Council chamber flickered to life, showing the face of an older human woman with steel-gray hair and cold eyes. Behind her, the bridge of a massive warship stretched into the distance. "Hello, Council members," Admiral Sarah Chen said, her voice calm and controlled. "I hope you remember me. 60 years is a long time, but I haven't forgotten your hospitality." The Council sat in stunned silence. The human they had exiled decades ago was still alive, and she was no longer asking for permission. "You exiled us because you said we were too dangerous," Sarah continued. "You were afraid of what humanity might become. Well, congratulations. Your fears came true." The transmission showed glimpses of the massive fleet surrounding Sarah's flagship. Thousands of ships, all bearing the symbols of species the Council had forgotten. "For 60 years you've enjoyed peace while we built something better in the darkness," Sarah said. "Now it's time to settle old debts. This is just the beginning, Council. We're coming home." The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in terrified silence. Outside, in the deep void between stars, the largest military force in galactic history began moving toward Council space. The Shadow War was about to become very real, and this time there would be no exile option. The alarm bells rang across Sanctum Prime as the massive fleet emerged from hyperspace. 3,000 ships appeared at the edge of the Council's home system, their hulls bearing the symbols of species long forgotten. On the bridge of the flagship Redemption, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the Council homeworld grow larger on the main screen. 60 years of exile had led to this moment. She was no longer the young officer who had begged for military action. Time had made her something far more dangerous, a leader with nothing left to lose. "Admiral," Captain Vex reported from his position. "Council Defense Fleet is moving to intercept. 200 ships," Sarah almost smiled. 200 ships against 3,000. The Council still didn't understand what they were facing. "Open communications," she ordered. "Let's give them a chance to surrender." The main screen shifted to show the Council chamber on Sanctum Prime. The same alien faces that had voted for humanity's exile 60 years ago now stared back at her with obvious terror. Prime Elder Zenth, older now but still recognizable, spoke first. Admiral Chen, we can discuss terms. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. Peace? Sarah's voice was ice cold, like the peace you offered us 60 years ago. The peace that came with exile and death. You must understand, Elder Voss interrupted. We were protecting the galaxy. Your species was too aggressive, too violent. And you were right, Sarah replied calmly. We were too violent for your council. But exile taught us something valuable. Violence has its place, when used properly. Behind Sarah, the massive bridge showed the organized chaos of a military operation. Aliens from 20 different species worked together with perfect coordination. Humans had trained them well. How? Prime Elder Zenth asked, his voice shaking. How did you survive in the void? How did you build all this? Sarah gestured to her bridge crew. You didn't just exile humanity, Council. You exiled everyone who didn't fit your narrow view of civilization. We found each other in the darkness, and we remembered who threw us away. On the tactical display, the Council's defense fleet was taking position. Their ships were beautiful, designed for ceremony and intimidation. But Sarah could see their weaknesses immediately. Your fleet is moving to engage, she observed. Are you sure about this? General Krex's voice came through the communication link. Stand down, Admiral. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Sarah actually laughed. Outgunned? General, do you remember what I told the Council 60 years ago? I said violence was sometimes the only answer. You called me a warmonger. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment, the Prime Elder said desperately. But surely we can negotiate. Negotiate? Sarah's eyes turned hard. The time for negotiation was 6 decades ago. You had your chance for diplomacy. You chose exile instead. The Council fleet opened fire first. Bright energy beams lanced across space toward the Alliance ships. But the human-trained fleet moved like a living thing, ships dancing between the attacks with impossible precision. Counterattack, Sarah ordered calmly. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The Alliance fleet moved in perfect formation, using tactics the Council had never seen. Ships that appeared to retreat suddenly flanked the enemy. False retreats became devastating ambushes. The Council's beautiful vessels were torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore their shields entirely. In 15 minutes, the Council's defense fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single Alliance ship took serious damage. The Council chamber fell silent as the tactical reports came in. Total defeat. Absolute humiliation. Impossible, General Krex whispered. Not impossible, Sarah corrected. Just military science. Something we learned during our exile. You see, when you're exiled to the edge of space, you have to become very good at fighting, or you die. She leaned forward in her command chair, and the Council members could see the decades of hardship and determination in her face. For 60 years, we've been building this moment. Every day we remembered your vote. Every night we planned our return. You created us, Council. Your fear made us into exactly what you were afraid we would become. What do you want? The Prime Elder asked, his voice barely a whisper. What I wanted 60 years ago, Sarah replied. Peace, order, a galaxy where every species can thrive. But since you proved incapable of providing that, she gestured to the massive fleet surrounding the Council. Homeworld, we'll do it ourselves. The Alliance ships moved into siege. Positions around Sanctum Prime, the planet's defense systems powered up, but everyone knew they were useless against such overwhelming force. You have 24 hours, Sarah announced. Complete surrender of Council authority. All military forces stand down. All member species accept Alliance leadership. Do this, and your worlds will be spared. And if we refuse? Elder Voss asked. Sarah's expression didn't change. Then we'll remove you by force. Every Council installation, every military base, every ship will tear down everything you built and start over. The transmission shifted to show views from Alliance ships throughout Council space. Fleets surrounded every major world. The Council's empire was already encircled. You called us too dangerous for civilized space, Sarah continued. You were right. We are dangerous to corrupt governments that abandon their allies, to political systems that exile anyone who disagrees, to councils that put their own comfort above galactic security. She stood up from her command chair, and the Council members could see the full weight of her authority. Behind her, alien officers from a dozen species stood ready to follow her orders without question. 60 years ago, you had a choice, Sarah said. You could have worked with us, used our strength to protect the galaxy. Instead, you threw us away because you were afraid. The main screen showed the massive Alliance fleet, weapons powered and ready. Your fear created this moment, Council. Your fear built this fleet. Your fear turned your greatest allies into your worst enemies. Sarah walked closer to the camera, her eyes burning with decades of controlled anger. But here's what your fear couldn't do. It couldn't kill us. It couldn't break us. It couldn't stop us from becoming everything you were terrified we might be. She stepped back and nodded to her communications officer. 24 hours, Council. Choose wisely, because this time there's no exile option. This time we're here to stay. The transmission ended, leaving the Council in darkness. Outside, 3,000 ships waited in perfect formation, ready to reshape the galaxy by force if necessary. The exiles had come home. 24 hours had passed. The council chamber on Sanctum Prime was filled with defeated alien leaders, their proud heads bowed in surrender. Outside, Alliance ships maintained their siege positions around every major world in council space. Admiral Sarah Chen walked slowly through the Great Hall where she had once begged for military action. Now, the same aliens who had voted for humanity's exile knelt before her in submission. The vote was unanimous, Prime Elder Zenth announced, his voice broken. The Council surrenders all authority to the Alliance. We accept your leadership. Sarah nodded calmly. No satisfaction showed on her face. This moment had been inevitable since the day they threw humanity into the void. Stand up, she said quietly. All of you. The Council members rose uncertainly. They expected anger, revenge, perhaps even execution. Instead, Sarah's expression remained thoughtful. 60 years ago you made a decision, she began. You said humanity was too dangerous for civilized space. You were protecting the galaxy from our violence and aggression. She walked to the great window overlooking Sanctum Prime's capital city. Millions of beings went about their daily lives, unaware that their government had just changed hands. But here's what you never understood, Sarah continued. We weren't angry because you exiled us. We were angry because you abandoned your duty. The council members exchanged confused glances. This wasn't the revenge speech they had expected. The shadow attacks, Sarah explained. The ones that started 60 years ago, just after our exile. Do you know what happened to them? General Krex spoke hesitantly. They stopped. About 50 years ago, the attacks just ended. Sarah turned from the window, and for the first time she almost smiled. They stopped because we stopped them. The silence in the chamber was complete. Every council member stared at her in shock. You see, exile taught us something valuable. When you're thrown into the dark void with no help coming, you learn to solve your own problems. We found those shadow attackers in deep space, ancient machines left behind by a dead civilization. We destroyed them all. Prime Elder Zenth's voice was barely a whisper. You saved us? We saved the galaxy, Sarah corrected. Because that's what responsible civilizations do. They protect others, even when those others have betrayed them. She walked back to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. This is why the Alliance will now rule the galaxy. Not because we're stronger or smarter than you, but because we understand something you forgot. True power comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Captain Vex entered the chamber carrying a data tablet. Admiral, the transition reports are coming in. All Council military forces have stood down. The member species are requesting instructions. Sarah took the tablet and studied the information. 12 species, hundreds of worlds, trillions of beings, all now under Alliance authority. What are your orders? Vex asked. Sarah looked around the council chamber one more time. The aliens who had once judged humanity now waited for human judgment in return. Full integration, she announced. Every council species becomes an equal member of the Alliance. Their representatives get full voting rights in the new government. The council members stared at her in disbelief. Elder Voss spoke first. You're not going to punish us? Punish you for what? Sarah asked. For making a mistake? For being afraid? Fear is natural. Everyone feels fear. She walked to Elder Voss and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. But fear cannot be allowed to control important decisions. That's the lesson here. When leaders let fear guide them, everyone suffers. Over the following months, the transition proceeded smoothly. The Alliance government established new laws that protected every species equally. Trade routes reopened under Alliance security. The military academy on Haven Station began training officers from all member races together. Sarah stood in her new office, looking out at the bustling capital city of New Terra, the Alliance's new seat of government. The building was designed by architects from 15 different species, a symbol of unity through diversity. The integration is going better than expected, Captain Vex reported during their weekly meeting. The former Council species are adapting well to Alliance leadership. They're not adapting to our leadership, Sarah corrected. They're learning to lead themselves again. There's a difference. Through the great windows, she could see ships from dozens of species landing at the spaceport. Karathi warriors worked alongside Zentari engineers. Nexari scientists collaborated with human researchers. The galaxy had never been so united. A young human officer entered with an urgent report. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting something unusual at the galaxy's edge. Energy signatures we've never seen before. Sarah took the report and studied it carefully. New signals from beyond known space. New mysteries to solve. New challenges to face. Looks like we might have visitors, she said thoughtfully. Send scout ships to investigate, but keep them at a safe distance. Should we alert the member worlds? Vex asked. Sarah looked out at the peaceful city below, where beings from across the galaxy lived and worked together in harmony. Children of different species played in the parks. Mixed crews of various races maintained the infrastructure. Peace through strength and unity. Not yet, she decided. Let's see what we're dealing with first. But prepare the fleet. If these visitors are hostile, they'll find a very different galaxy than the one the Council used to run. As the sun set over New Terra, Sarah reflected on the long journey from exile to empire. The Council had feared what humanity might become. They were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they thought. Humanity had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that grew stronger through adversity, that turned enemies into allies, that protected others even when those others had failed them. The Council's greatest mistake had created the galaxy's greatest success. In the depths of space, unknown ships moved toward the galaxy's edge. But Sarah Chen was no longer the desperate admiral begging for action. She was the leader of the strongest alliance in galactic history. Whatever came next, the galaxy would face it together. And this time, no one would be exiled for being too dangerous. They would be welcomed for being dangerous enough to protect everyone else.